Well, this is really awesome that you're here to sit down with us and
Honored, man.
and kind of talk through some of the stuff that you've experienced, because you've done some really cool stuff. I have to say, so I saw the Dropbox movie.
Oh, cool.
That was really
Right.
like, that movie was heavy, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Is that, and I saw a couple interviews that you said that really made an impact on you.
Yeah.
Did that change a focus for you to make those kind of films?
Great question. Yeah, so, I grew up making movies since I was 9.
Okay.
Right? So, like, I would get all the kids together who were the most, like, elvish or trollish looking kids, and we would make Lord of the Rings, and we'd make Harry Potter, and we'd do James Bond, and
oh, wow.
And so I always wanted to be an entertainer. Like, I always wanted to make entertainment. But then when I got to college, I realized I wasn't very good at entertaining people.
Well, how did you know you weren't good at entertaining people?
Just by the reactions.
People told you.
Yeah, no, people told me, and I think that was okay. That was a merciful thing in a way, a loving thing, because it helped me. And I think most filmmakers can benefit from, instead of doing what they admire, they should do what they're good at.
Oh,
and I think
yeah.
that's like a key nuance. I think I learned, thankfully early on, where I was like, I really like horror movies, but like, I'm not scary. That's why it was good for me to learn what I was good at, what I wasn't good at, and instead of following my passion, I could follow my gifts a little bit more. And then I became passionate. But when you're talking about the Dropbox, that's how I became a Christian, right? So
that's your conversion story.
yeah, while I was making the Dropbox, I became a Christian, and so it changed not only my trajectory in the types of movies I made, but in why I was doing it, and what the heart was that I had, and also like what the goal was, and who I was telling stories about. So
that's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So if you weren't a Christian, yet you went to tell this story,
right?
What was the draw for you to just the human aspect of it?
I think, to be honest, every film student is looking for their big break.
Sure.
Like, what's going to be the story that's going to make you relevant or interesting? And I think this had all of that.
Yeah.
Right? It was social justice. It was like this man in the streets of Korea was rescuing kids, and I thought, I'm going to Sundance, son. I'm going to Sundance Film Festival.
My ticket.
Didn't work out that way, but what ended up happening in my life is I was confronted personally, not just professionally, with a life that seemed to make mine really fake.
Yeah.
Like, it was so real, so honest, and he had lived so sacrificially. It cut me apart to see how selfishly I'd lived mine. Because art, of course, is like that. It's all about you and what you want to say and who you are and people applauding you. So that's how I came to Christ. And then out of that, of course, it was me just dedicating every story I tell from here on to God and to His glory. So
that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
What a story. So you go and you make the Dropbox, and it changes your life.
Totally.
And then you hear about this story in Charleston. And like, when I hear the way that you tell the story about, your wife was crying and you went to go do that, my thought is, well, what is it inside of you that said, I want to go there?
Yeah.
Like, that's big.
That's a good question. So, for me, I think I'm always looking for stories that show the world that God is real. And so when I heard about the story in Charleston, but more than the shooting, when I saw the families stand in court and forgive the murderer, I thought, that's a story people will actually listen to. Even if they don't go to church, even if they have no interest in spiritual things, they'll go, something real just happened,
Well, it seems impossible.
It seems impossible. And it was the greatest act of love that I had seen since Korea. Since this man who adopted 20 kids with disabilities. And I think that's what we have to do to catch the attention of a very busy, distracted world oftentimes. But I actually, to your question, stayed away from the story for a year.
Really?
Yeah. You don't get to talk about it that way on stage a lot of the times, but like, my reaction initially was, that was the most powerful thing I've ever seen, but I feel like it would be wrong for me to go turn that into a movie.
From a commercialization standpoint.
Yeah, because, these families don't need to relive this tragedy. How do you do that? But God just would not let me escape it. For a whole year, I just Jonah'd that thing.
Yeah.
And I was just like,
I'm not going to Nineveh.
I'm not going. This is I'm a white guy from Orange County. What am I going to contribute to this? This is inappropriate, wrong. And God was just continue to lay it on my heart. that he wanted to say something,
Yeah.
and he wanted to tell a story here that was redemptive. And so I ended up connecting through a really cool divine intervention kind of thing with an African American pastor in New York City who had connections with the families. I had met with him for
in
something.
Charleston.
Yeah, but I had met with him for something completely unrelated, and I was telling him about this project I was working on. He was like, "What's really on your heart?" You know.
How could he tell?
He could tell that I was either just not passionate about it, or I was doing it out of obligation, or. And he was kind of like, "Okay, I get that you want to do this screenplay or this thing, but like, what do you really care about?" And I was like, there's this thing in Charleston.
Yeah.
And he was like, "I was there."
No.
And so immediately it was like this white guy, this black guy. We came together and said, "Okay, we're going to do this together. We're going to do it for God." So we went to Charleston, met with the families. We told them that any money the producers make goes back to them, and we want the world to know where God was in all of this.
Yeah.
And that's why they said yes. It's because we wanted to make it about him, not about us, or even about them first. And no media person had ever said that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you go in with the heart with, we want to tell your story, not for our gain,
Right.
but because your story is going to make a difference in people's lives.
Exactly.
And from a Christian perspective, that's what we're called to do.
Absolutely.
Right? Wow. So then how then do you approach that with them? Like you said, it's inappropriate, it's bordering on, commercialization of a very personal thing.
Yeah, and I think that's my first commitment was I went to my wife and I said, "Are you okay if I make no money whatsoever on this for probably a couple or 3 years?"
Yeah. After she cried again, what did she say?
she definitely, she was like, "Okay." What's the heart behind that? Is this just you doing the pauper gospel thing? You're not allowed to make money. I was like, no, I think this needs to be an offering to the Lord, and I don't want to profit off of the tragedy. And she said, "Okay, let's do it." So my wife is really the unsung hero of all this, because she supported both of us through this whole process so that I could do it this way.
Yeah.
And so the families would trust us. Because it's the one thing to give lip service, it's another thing to say, if I make any money, which again remains to be seen.
Right.
I'm not keeping that.
Yeah.
And
that's another unbelievable thing to say. Okay, you're not going to make money really.
Right.
In this world of everything's about the next dollar.
Oh yeah, God is money in America. So I think for me, it's always.
Say that again.
God is money in America.
Wow, that's huge.
And so I think for me, understanding that nuance about, I didn't really grow up in the church culture, knowing that people are hesitant to be a part of church. They feel like people are hypocritical.
Biggest complaint about church.
Of course. So it was just a way for me to get rid of every excuse and make sure there was nothing distracting from the heart of the story in my own life. And also in just the team around it, so people could come and watch something that was pure and beautiful and unadulterated. So, and that's we did the same thing with the Dropbox.
Yeah.
So at some point, I probably need to make some amount of money.
I mean, you have to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about money in the sense that people see the greed side of it, but the reality is we don't have this church and this, that we can't help people.
Of course.
We can't do the things that we need to do without money on some level.
Of course.
So you decide that you're going to do this for no money.
Yep.
And then you get into the process. How did it feel for you as a Christian walking into this racial situation, which both of us, I've grown up in Orange County, so I don't necessarily, I'm in this like non-racist bubble idea. Right? And then you go to Charleston, where like my family and I went around the country this last year for 86 days and saw a bunch of different stuff.
Wow.
But I've been into cities and I'm like, I didn't know this was real.
Oh, totally.
How did that impact you?
Well, I think it was sobering because I had experiences where I realized that if it was a black director, the film probably couldn't have been made.
Why is that?
They wouldn't have had access to certain parts of the city, certain places we filmed.
Oh, really? In Charleston?
Yeah, and not in any kind of like explicit, obvious way, but just in that kind of subtle, passive, like, well, we don't really want the angry black movie, to portraying our city.
Wow.
So I was a very harmless kind of voice to come into the culture and be like, hey, look, this is about forgiveness and love and grace. But through the process, it also became about justice, and it became about repentance and standing for the truth. And I think that's why the film is not comfortable.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's so true. And that's, to me, it's the films we make as Christians are most like Jesus when they're both beautiful and hopeful and challenging, right? And convicting, because he was never just like the warm blanket for your soul.
No way.
At all. The Bible is an incredibly offensive book. And so I'm hoping that because I went through that awkwardness, because I stepped into that discomfort, and because I had to grow and be changed, that the film will naturally also be like that for people. And as just a white guy, I think I learned a lot more about how it's less that when people talk about racism, right? They're like saying, you're a racist.
Right.
They're saying our systems are racist. And the things that are around us that control our destiny feel like they're working against me as an African American, right? And I think that's why, instead of getting defensive as white Americans, we need to listen and learn about the systemic injustices that exist, and how we can step into those places and leverage our privilege for the good of other people.
Right.
And that's where real change will happen.
Yeah. And coming back to, you said something on stage about just showing Jesus to people. Like that literally, if you break it down to the simplest level, it's showing Jesus to people.
Absolutely.
And in a scenario with like this story, I haven't got to see the movie yet. I'm really excited about seeing it. I'm going to go see it on the 17th in the theater. I'm pumped. But to say that these people, in the midst of a circumstance that you or I would have been, like, I don't know where I would have been.
I don't know either.
Like mentally or emotionally, how I would have handled it. They stood up within 48 hours, which again is another, like, that's not real.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And they did what they did to forgive this person that intentionally murdered all these people.
Yes, they
like,
did.
That. You experienced talking to these people.
Yeah.
What was that like to say they really did this?
I think it was, for me, these are the type of people I make movies for, because I want to give them the mic.
Yeah.
Because their authority to share Christ is so much greater than mine will ever be. And I think
because of their experience?
Because of their pain. And our world responds to that because we no longer respond to just reason. We respond to beauty. And we respond to pain because we see so much of it in our world. And I think for me, when I saw the families forgive 48 hours later, it of course reminded me of my own forgiveness and the way God has forgiven and cleansed me of all of my stuff. And I think I made the whole film from that place of, I know I stand in need of that, so how do I put that on display?
Yeah.
In a way that's authentic and real, because some people are still on that journey.
Yeah.
And there's people in the film that don't forgive yet and are trying, and they're works in progress.
Yeah.
And I think as the church, we have to have that surface area to let people be on that journey.
Right.
And yet at the same time, we see that these families loved a murderer, loved him. They didn't just say something to him; they loved him.
Well, they showed it.
They showed it, yeah, and they still do.
You said something just now, saying that it wasn't a unified forgiveness. There were people that were not ready to do that.
Definitely, yeah.
How did that interaction work? Are they apart now? Are they divided? Or
I think it's still hard.
Yeah.
But what's amazing is that we showed it to all the families already, of course, and we showed them first, and then we just had a screening in DC where we brought them all together again. And some of them are really a lot further along than they used to be, and the film has been a part of that healing.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And I think for me, having been on my honeymoon when I heard about the shooting, and then meeting the man who lost his wife, I mean, that was a deep kind of dichotomy for me to kind of live with, that sense of like, what would I do? Where would I be in all of this? But I also know that Jesus paid an unpayable debt, and that we are all in need of forgiveness. And so I think that's part of the reason why God wanted me to tell the story. Yeah. Is so that the foot of the cross is flat. Yeah. And that's where we ultimately in the film meet. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Wow, this is so powerful, man. This is really, I'm excited about the movie. I'm really excited. And I am looking forward to see what else God does with you, because this was divine. Like for him to put you in this situation where you're like, I'm not going to do it. Yeah. And you have a Jonah moment where the pastor calls you out. It's like, what do you want to do? God's real.
and he shows up in the places we don't necessarily expect or want him to be, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thanks for being here.
Honored.
Everybody needs to go see EMANUEL.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So good.